this session is devoted to this, and we have three very eminent scholars contributing to it. At the age of 75, I have become Vedanti, you know? Vedanti. I've lost my teeth. So, if we read this line, the past to present and future, it stands for, it can stand for either, it's an interrogation, not just a declaration. It's either continuity or absence of continuity or discontinuity. You see, the example of absence of continuity is the classical Greek civilization, which perished, and the contemporary Greece has no relationship really with the classical Greece, language or otherwise or thought. Perished because it was on the crossroads, it was a small country, and caught in the cross current. I think discontinuity, Europe is a good example of discontinuity. By discontinuity, one means that there is first one kind of thinking, then it's not inflected, but in a way drastically modified or replaced by another kind of thinking. For example, the pagan and the Hebraic roots were supplanted by the Christian system. So there was a discontinuity there. And from the Christian system itself, post-Renaissance, there was again a break, post-Renaissance, and the loss of faith and so on, and the Enlightenment period and the Enlightenment. And then, there is also a discontinuity with the Enlightenment after the World War II, where, there is the modernity is again, questioned totally. In other words, you see, a thread does not run through it all, a thread. And you have to, of course, write volumes to see where what thread continues to bind. Contrary to that, Indian civilization, I'll borrow a title from an English film, American film. A river runs through it all. From the Rigvedic times to the contemporary times, a river runs through it all. If you stick hard to the metaphor literally, there was the Sindhu, and around that river civilization, the Vedas were composed. Then there was Saraswati, and around that the Upanishads were composed, and you had great rishis like Markandeya and others. Even today, if you go there, you have Shahabad Markanda, and you have a Markanda rivulet, Markandeya rishi. And then there is the Ganga. When Saraswati dried up and the Aryans became Haryanvis, then the thinkers migrated to the Ganga plains, Jamuna Ganga plains, and the Brahmanas and the Puranas, not really Brahmanas, but the Puranas are a product of that Ganga river. So a river runs through it all. The point is that what originated as Rigvedic civilization, the one interpretation, one understanding that I will like to have is, or I have is, that there is a continuity. There is a continuity. And you may have to discover it, you may experience it without knowing that there is continuity. Because we have, not everybody now reads those texts, not everybody knows Sanskrit, but then if you visit small rural places and you see the young women carrying pitchers of water on their head to their villages, and if you read the Rig Veda, you find an exact description of that. You see, you find that India persists. That India persists. So there is this continuity. And is this what continuity is it? It's a civilizational continuity. We all know the difference between civilization and culture. Civilization deals with the artifacts and culture with mentifacts. So there are institutions come and go, or institutions change their, the tokens which fill those institutions, they change, but the institutions, they may die, they may remain, but the codes behind them, the idea systems, the foundation of ideas remains the same. So Indian civilization continues. Civilizational continuity, basically it is the continuity of culture, knowledge culture. To my mind, Indian society was a knowledge society right from the beginning, and we didn't have to wait for San Pedrosa to make it a knowledge society. It was right from the beginning. And therefore, with this brief, but then, we can look upon it as a history of disruption, as a history of rupture, as a history of the same thread running through it. So we will have now 3 scholars who will look at this from their point of view, perspective. They are scholars in their own, and our young friend is a brilliant creative mind who has reconstructed a certain era, forgotten era. And Professor Vamdev Shastri ji, he is a great scholar of Vedas, Vedic scholar, and he has paraphrased the Vedas again for the modern in quotes people. And Javed ji has undertaken the task of making Hinduism respectable and acceptable to the West. So we have these 3 persons who are going to look at this theme, India's past, present and future. One more thing I like to say, that in West they say time is money. That is their metaphor. Time is money. हमारी समय की धारा. हमारे यहाँ the metaphor is that time is a river. Time is a river, a flow, and you can't really, in fact, if we read Bhartrihari's Kala Samudesha in Vakyapadiya, Kal it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. It's a construct. And the continuity is there. It's like a river. And if you watch from the top and there is a boat in the river, you don't see the water movement, water flowing. But if you come back after 3 hours, the boat is at a different place. And you think time has passed. Time has passed. But it's there. So that's a different perspective altogether. But then our perspective, which is a different perspective, is a forgotten perspective. And I think the time has come now, with the efforts being made by our young friends. Sorry to call you young, sir, Ram Madhav ji, and young but very wise and mature, that they are bringing back this knowledge system. Okay. Now I think I'll start with Vamdev ji, first of all, and he will give his perspective on this theme.
Namaskar, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Since my time is a little short, I actually did something unusual, which is I wrote something out to cover the main points. First of all, of course, I would like to thank Ram Madhav and the organizers for this wonderful event, but I want to go directly into the program. Ideas depend upon a vision. A vision depends upon a seer. Ideas reflect values and ideals, background ideas. Now, what my talk is, I call a call for a new Rishi vision. The dominant model of spiritual leadership in the history of India, from ancient to modern times, is that of the Rishi, the seer of universal truth. The ancient Vedic rishis like Vasishta and Vishwamitra are credited with establishing the dharmic foundation for Indian culture, Bharatiya Sanskriti, over 5,000 years ago on both spiritual and mundane levels. Great rishis have come periodically over the centuries in India, up to recent times, such as Sri Aurobindo, Ramana Maharshi, and Swami Vivekananda, to maintain a deep level of guidance for this sacred land of Bharat. Today, in a new 21st century and complex high-tech global era, we above all need a group of new modern rishis with a global vision, both rooted in the ancient rishi vision, but also capable of unfolding a new future that has its new potentials as well. The rishi is first of all the enlightened yogi and meditative sage with access to the cosmic mind, who develops for humanity the paths to self-realization and universal consciousness that is the true and highest goal of human life. Yet the rishi is also one who creates culture in the broadest and highest sense of the term Bhutakrit, Lokakrit. The rishi envisions a dharmic culture relative to the organization of society, the economy, science, art, literature, and medicine. But he or she does so from a state of higher consciousness, not merely from the standpoint of the human intellect or ego, according to any particular social or political theory or bias. The rishi is linked to the cosmic mind and is not limited to the human brain for his knowledge, which is not second-hand information, but direct information, wisdom from the universe itself. The cosmic mind thinks in terms of organic wholes and existential powers, recognizing an integral and comprehensive reality in which a unity of consciousness in the universe sustains innumerable diverse processes from subatomic to supragalactic levels in a mutually supportive and interdependent network of forces. The rishi mind is different from the ordinary human intellect that is caught up in duality, division, analysis, limited views, and contradictory opinions. The human intellect tends to propose mechanical solutions to human problems that can damage the very fabric of life, much as we saw in the last and even current century, dominated by such trends as consumerism, socialism, fascism, and communism, which have all been found wanting. The rishi mind will bring about lasting solutions for human problems that are in harmony with all of nature and with the universe as a whole, that arise organically from within us with love and wisdom and are not imposed artificially from the outside by force. The role of the rishi is not simply to inform, but more so to inspire. That energy of inspiration is one of the key factors that we need today, particularly for the youth. It is not enough to have a good agenda and follow it correctly. A deeper feeling and intuition is necessary that can adapt enduring principles to the ever-transformative movement of life. True inspiration is also a higher aspiration, a calling for us to search out our highest potential as spiritual beings. This inner aspiration motivates us to continually expand our awareness, breaking down old constructs in favor of vaster and more adaptable formulations. A new rishi order must be capable of using the best in science, technology, the media and communication realms, the main factors in our global society today. But the rishi will use these tools of technology for a higher idealism and self-transcendence, not merely for ordinary purposes of profit or enjoyment. The rishi gives a call to a new sacrifice or a yajna, a new way of service in which we learn to offer our individual lives for the manifestation of a higher awareness for all humanity. The rishi honors the sacred order of life and brings the sacred into all that we do. The eternal rishi teachings. A new rishi order will bring about the revival and modernization of the ancient rishi teachings. These include the many branches of yoga, Vedanta, Ayurveda, Jyotish, Vastu, and all the Vedic sciences. Vedanta promotes a higher self-realization and self-knowledge that is the essence of all true knowledge. Without knowing oneself, no other knowledge is effective and will ultimately lead to division and conflict. Yet true self-knowledge is not a knowledge of the body or mind, but of the consciousness that dwells behind them and beyond time and space. Yoga, in the classical sense, facilitates the integral development of body, mind, and consciousness through asana, pranayama, mantra, and meditation, so that we can access all of our higher potentials in a comprehensive manner. It is the foundation of Vedanta. The Rishi, as a great yogi, will bring the vastness of the yogic vision into all aspects of human action, thought, and awareness. He or she will make all culture into a practice of yoga or integration with the whole. Ayurveda teaches us the healing and well-being of body and mind through natural methods of diet, exercise, herbs, and massage. It not only addresses disease, but also promotes longevity and rejuvenation to help unfold our greater creativity and awareness. And this is my point here. All children in India, and even all adults, should learn the fundamentals of yoga, Ayurveda, and Vedanta. That is the root dharmic knowledge of India's great heritage that is already spreading worldwide. Jyotish, or Vedic astrology, provides an understanding of the secrets of time and karma that rule over our lives, so that our actions are aligned with the universal movement and reflect its efficacy and power. Vastu gives us an understanding of the powers of subtle directional influences, so that we remain in harmony with the energy currents in our natural environment and can create a sacred space in which to live. Through Jyotish and Vastu, we can understand time and space, not only from an outer level, but also from within our own minds and hearts. These Vedic sciences and disciplines have tremendous practical value for everyone and are universal in their knowledge, helpful to all times and all cultures, and they're also becoming recognized and to some extent even lucrative professions in the Western world. In addition, the Rishi would restore Sanskrit as a universal language of mantra and carrying the deeper knowledge. The Rishi speaks the language of mantra, which enables us to focus our minds in concise patterns of sound, light, and energy, which can extract the essence of truth from all that we see. Sanskrit can help us develop a deeper awareness to solve all the problems of life according to a cosmic vision. New types or types of new rishis. The rishi political leader promotes a vision of global harmony, honoring all human beings as part of a single family, rooted in the greater family of the whole of life and whole of existence. The rishi business leader promotes a vision of abundance as the natural right of all beings. India should follow the economics of Lakshmi, not those of scarcity. Abundance for all should be the aim, not simply wealth for a few. The rishi artist envisions a deep refinement of expression, using the tools of sound, color, form, and light in order to elevate the mind and heart, not simply to stimulate or entertain. The rishi educator will educate the whole human being, which is as a universal soul carrying the powers of infinity and eternity for life, mind, and consciousness. The rishi will also serve as a living example to follow. The rishi is the supreme karma yogi who understands the highest truth and works to embody it in a creative manner for the benefit of all. It is not we as separate individuals who can guide humanity to a better world. We must awaken that rishi vision, the inner guide or antaratma of the Upanishads, the universal presence within the heart, in order to propel us to our higher goal with certainty and with grace. The rishi ideal is daunting to achieve, but that should propel us to reach for what is highest and not be content with ordinary goals or the sameness of all. India is not about the sameness of all. It is about achieving the highest, the best, and the greatest excellence for each one. In conclusion here, I am reminded of a verse from the Rig Veda. The rishis found the secret light. With the mantras of truth, they generated the dawn. May we awaken to a new dawn and a new renaissance at both spiritual and cultural levels, honoring not only the outer physical sciences, but the inner science of consciousness. The Rishi vision, embodied in the Gayatri mantra from the great Rishi Vishwamitra, has guided Bharat in the past and can do so for the future. Tat savitu varenyam bhargo devasya dhimahi Diyo yo na prachodayat. May we meditate upon the supreme transformative light of the divine creative power, that it may awaken our intelligence. Varanium, that which is most supreme, adorable, choice, and highest. May that inner sun of universal truth and pure consciousness arise within us. May all our thoughts become mantras full of light, and may India rise through its own Rishi vision, not through falling under the shadow of lesser formulations, values, and ideologies. May this conference help us inaugurate a new Rishi vision for India and for the entire world. Om Namah Paramarishibhyaha. Om Veda Purushaya Namaha. May that Bharat vision, may that Rishi vision guide us all. And as my concluding point, I would say, India can find the solutions to every social, political, intellectual, and even scientific problem through going back and nurturing its own Rishi vision in a creative, innovative, stimulating, and dialogue manner. And I think that is what we are seeing here. And that is the greatness of this country that will continue to take us forward. Namaste.
Very grateful to you, Shastriji, for a very inspiring discourse. He says that India has to relocate itself in the Rishi vision, and for him, a Rishi is, apart from being a visionary, he's a man of cosmic vision, universal, not believing in boundaries. He's a political thinker, he's an economist, he's a sociologist. That is a total vision. He owns the total vision. And this total vision is an expression of the dharmic knowledge, which is embedded in the Indian thought system. And by recapturing that, I think the vision is very much alive in the ordinary people. But if our modern, educated, ruling Indians, if they recapture this vision, they can find solutions not only for themselves, but according to Shastriji, India, the importance of Indian thought is, the Vedic thought is, that it has solutions for the problems of the world. It is the only alternative that the world has at present. Thank you very much, sir. And so there is a thread of dharmic knowledge which runs through this civilization, according to Shastriji.
Thank you. Yes, hi, my name is Amish, and allegedly I am a writer. I'm going to speak about the Aryan invasion theory and the caste system, how the past has impacted our present and the future. But before I start that, I'd like to speak a little bit about this conference itself. I think it is such a positive development. There are authors and intellectuals that one has read, but one never gets a chance to interact with in conferences in India. And for the first time, one is getting that opportunity in India with this conference. So my compliments to the India Foundation, my compliments to Ram Madhavji, who's sadly not here. I don't think he want to hear me. My compliments to everyone associated with this conference. It's a wonderful and positive effort. And I hope Shivji's blessings remain on this foundation, and this is the first of many more to follow. But as with everything positive, as Dharma teaches us, there's always a sense of balance. As with everything positive, some negative also emerges as well. And the negative for our panel is that we're the first ones after lunch. So it's our onerous task to keep you awake. And I think one of the best ways, one of the things that I've learned, one of the best ways to keep people awake is to tell a story. So what I'm going to do is start with a small story. And then I'll get into the topic. The story is about me. It was when I was in the second standard, when I was studying in this school called the Utkal English Primary School in Orissa. It was a small school, some 30 kilometers out of Rourkela, which those of you, I don't know how many of you guys are from Orissa? Okay, so you would have heard of Rourkela. It's a mid-level town in western Orissa, and I studied 30 kilometers away from there. So in the second standard, there was this situation where our teacher was teaching us about the seasons in India. And the book said that there are 4 seasons in India: spring, summer, autumn, and winter. Now, I was in the second standard, but I'm a Shiva worshipper. You know how we Shiva worshippers are. We are basically rebellious people. So when she said that India has 4 seasons, spring, summer, autumn, and winter, I raised my hand and I said, "Ma'am, monsoon kahan gaya?" I don't think the teacher liked my question, because she said, "What does the book say?" "Ma'am, it says autumn." "What did I say?" "It said, ma'am, you said autumn." "Then where does the question of monsoon come up?" Now that happened to be the rainy season, and it was raining outside. So I said, "But ma'am, I can see the rain." And the class started laughing. I don't think she liked that either. So then she came up with a new story. She said that actually autumn and monsoon are one and the same. So I said, "But ma'am, you said in autumn the leaves fall off the trees. But I've seen the rain. In monsoon, the leaves start growing out of trees." So then, I was called to the principal's office. My mother was called, and I was called a troublemaker. I remember this incident because my mother was called to school. And the principal told me, if in the book it says autumn, and if your teacher says autumn, then you will also say autumn. I think perhaps somewhere in the back of my mind, Shivji sent me a message saying, "Ab bas kar yaar." So I kept quiet. I didn't say anything. But in my mind, I still said, "But I can see the rain." The Aryan invasion theory is as stupid as this 4 seasons that is taught to us. And the proponents of the Aryan invasion theory are just like my second grade teacher. So, thank you. Thanks, buddy. I have a bit of a sore throat. So I'm going to ask some questions on the Aryan invasion theory. Fortunately, my second grade teacher isn't around out here. It is sent down to us as fact. It's in our books. Our teachers say it. How dare we question it? Well, let's be Shiva devotees and be rebellious and actually question. The first question is very famously known as actually David Frawley's paradox. I've been a fan of David G for a long time, and he raised this very simple paradox. Apparently, there was this group of people called the Aryans who left no archaeological evidence anywhere, who were a bunch of nomads, and who came up with the largest body of literature ever known to man. On the other hand, there is this great civilization which had a scope and vastness way beyond other civilizations of that era, who were apparently peopled by a group of people called the Dravidians. and which left copious amounts of archaeological evidence, but they left no literature. And what David G. said is the only logical explanation is that both were one and the same. And what the proponents say is actually they don't say anything. They don't even try to explain this. There's a famous religious scholar called Karen Armstrong. I'm sure you guys must have heard of her. I read a book of hers, or rather I'm in the process of reading a book of hers called Fields of Blood. And she speaks of this problem of archaeological evidence. She says that she refuses to believe that Joshua destroyed Jericho, as it tells us in the Bible, because there's simply no archaeological evidence of this. And I say, yeah, fair enough, actually. That's a fair enough point. If there's no archaeological evidence, why should we believe it? Now, you'd think that she'd follow the same standard for the Aryan invasion theory. You would be wrong. Because in the very same book, she mentions the Aryan invasion theory. And she also says that, admittedly, there is no archaeological evidence that the Aryans ever invaded India. But even then, I still believe in the theory. That's what she writes in a book. We have absorbed this message so deeply that even if there is no evidence, I will still believe this theory, that even an intellectual of the order of Karen Armstrong still follows it and writes it in a book. Let's look at genetic data. If the Aryans actually came in 3,500 years ago, as we are told, in 1500 BC, there should be genetic data of a vast infusion, because they apparently came and conquered a civilization which probably had a population of 30 million people. There should be evidence of a vast infusion of a new gene pool. And if they are related to the Eurasians, to the Western Eurasians, then there should be a common ancestry that you can draw between them, and that ancestry should not be older than 3,500 years. What does genetic data say? There is this paper that had come out by T. Kivil Sild. I'm sorry, I had to check it. I find it difficult to remember Northern European names. T. Kivil Sild. He came out with this paper and he compared the genes of West Eurasians and the ANI, ancestral North Indians, who are supposed to be descendants of the Aryans. There is no common ancestry for 12,500 years. And that's genetic science. Okay? So if these groups were ever together, they parted at least 12,500 years ago. So how could the Aryans have invaded in 1500 BC? Stephen Oppenheimer's, I'm not saying these papers are not challenged, but at least you should research it. Stephen Oppenheimer's Y chromosome model actually shows that there was an out of India movement, probably 40,000-50,000 years ago. This at least needs to be researched. Kam se kam research to karo. But the answer usually is, don't ask questions, or I'll take you to the principle. Let's discuss Saraswati. We were told that the Aryans obviously invaded India. Why? Because I told you so. And then we say, but sir, the Aryans, if they wrote the Rig Veda, their main river is the Saraswati. The Rig Veda refers to the Saraswati at least 200 times. It refers to Ganga Ji not more than 2 or 3 times. So how come that happens? And they tell us, no, the Saraswati is actually mythical. But sir, it was real. There's been research done now, satellite surveys. There's a wonderful book by Michael Dinino. I would encourage all of you to read it, which proves that the Saraswati actually existed. And it died out between 1900 to 2000 BC, somewhere around that period. When this issue was raised, then the answer was, actually the Aryans weren't referring to the Saraswati in India. There was some Saraswati river in Central Asia, and they were actually talking about that. No, but sir, in the Rig Veda it says the Saraswati went and joined the sea. No, apparently that was a wrong translation, because it wasn't, they didn't join the sea, it joined another river. Okay, so you wrongly translated from the Rig Veda. But what about the myth of Kashin, which says clearly there was a western sea and an eastern sea, which is what the ancients called the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal? How do you explain this? Stop asking questions. I'll take you to the principal. That's the usual response. Let's talk about horses. That's one of the things that's usually spoken of. That obviously we are told that horses are not native to India apparently, and there is many of our non-fiction books are written with the flair of fiction books, because it says Aryans came thundering down the passes on horses and the terrified Indus Valley people ran away. I'd love this turn of phrase even in a fiction book. But can we actually say that horses didn't exist, are not native to India? There is a hymn in the Rig Veda. I believe it's in the first mandal, right, sir? The 34 rib, yeah. It's in the first mandal. There's a hymn in the Rig Veda which describes an Ashwa sacrifice, and it speaks of a horse with 34 ribs. The Central Asian horse, from where the Aryans apparently came, has 36 ribs. David Frawley ji has actually spoken of the Shivalik horse, which has 34 ribs. And this horse has been around in India for tens of thousands of years. Could this be the horse that the Vedic people were talking about? I don't think this question has been answered by anyone. There was a very interesting report that I read recently, which takes it even deeper. It speaks of the ancient ancestors of horses and tapirs and rhinoceros. It's a being called Cambatherium. Okay? Fossils have been discovered which are more than 50 million years old. And this was the ancestor of all horses. Where was this fossil discovered? In India. Remember, 50 million years ago, the Indian subcontinent was actually a separate island floating on the Tethys Sea. It hadn't crashed into the Eurasian peninsula, Eurasian continent as yet, which meant the horses actually originated in the Indian subcontinent. So I told this person that I know, a person of a very high social class, and I told her that there's this report that I read of of a species called Cambatherium. So she said, where was this fossil found? So I said, it was found in Gujarat. Then she rolled her eyes. I said, what happened? She says, you know what happens in Gujarat. I said, but that was more than 50 million years ago. Even the human beings hadn't evolved. Then she said, what university would have come out with this research paper? I don't think it's credible. Actually, it was brought out by Johns Hopkins University. The conversation ended there. The Aryan invasion theory is primarily a linguistic project. It's based on the study of linguistics. I'm not deriding linguistics. There is certainly a high standard of knowledge that does exist there. I'm not denying it. But linguistics, it's an art. It's not a science. And my suggestion is historians should, of course, look at linguistics, but they should try and import some sciences as well. Genetic science, paleontology, hell, even archaeology. Why not? We should use archaeology for history as well. They should try and import these sciences, and the theories will then become more robust. As Albert Einstein had said, the theory must not contradict empirical facts. Otherwise, it's not a high quality theory. So my suggestion is we should keep asking questions, and those questions should be asked by scholars. And we must ask those questions confidently but calmly and without anger. We should ask those questions with quiet confidence. Why? Because truth is on our side. Because we can see the rain. That's what I want to say on the Aryan invasion theory. The Aryan invasion theory was a fantasy, a monstrosity forced on us by foreigners. The caste system as it exists today is a crime that we committed, and that we committed on our own people. The original system was not supposed to be this. The original system was the Varna system. As in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna said very clearly, Chaturvarnyam maya srushtam karma Guna karma vibhagashah. Guna karma vibhagashah. He said very clearly to Arjun that I have created the 4 varnas based on guna and karma. He doesn't speak of birth anywhere. This was the way it was supposed to be. If you look at our ancient past, there were rishis who emerged from the lower caste and who were respected. And of course, we have heard of Maharshi Valmiki ji. Of course, we've heard of Maharshi Krishna Dwaipayan. But have you heard of Maharshi Satyakam Jabali? Have you heard of Maharshi Shakti? The Vajrasuchak Upanishad says very clearly, he was born to a Chandal mother and became a Maharshi. Have you heard of Maharshi Matanga? He was born to a Shudra Baba father. Lord Ram visited him when he was in banishment. This was the kind of country we were. When did we lose our way? Genetic science has given us a clear answer. Genetic science has proven that practically every Indian has a combination of 2 genetic groups, ANI and ASI, ancestral North Indian, ancestral South Indian. Regardless of religion, regardless of caste, all of us have it. The proportions may differ, but practically all of us have it. Somewhere around 2000 years ago, and why did we all of us have it? Because actually all groups used to intermingle. Somewhere around 1900 to 2000 years ago, this intermingling stopped. Why? God knows. Okay? Singh ji spoke of the fact that India had a quarter of the world's GDP till as late as 1700. That is a fact. But we were even higher at 180. We were probably 38 to 40% if you see Angus Madison's data. But you should go deeper than the GDP. Look at per capita income. At per capita income, we were already going down by the 7th, 8th century. When we became rigid, that's when our decline began. And we have to realize that, and we have made good progress in the last 60, 70 years, I'm not denying it, but we have a long way to go. We have to create an India where a B.R. Ambedkar is not just seen, is not reduced to just a backward caste leader. He should be seen for what he truly was, a Rishi. If he'd lived 2000 years ago, the quality of his intellect was so awesome, he would have been called a Rishi. That's the India that we need to create. All of us need to work hard at it. It's not just the moral thing to do. It's not just the thing to do in national interest. It is the Hindu thing to do. It's the Sanatani thing to do. We must fight the caste system the way it exists today. Thank you.
Amish ji, this wonderful, because when you talked about invasion theory, I was looking at Sir, because he is the pioneer of, negating Aryan invasion theory, and of course you mentioned him. The word invade and the word, theory, both are denied by the way Aryan invasion theory. And also, Amish ji, one small thing. In fact, linguistics poses the greatest problem for the Aryan invasion theory. It's not that it builds it, but that is something later. Now, it's my pleasure to invite Javed ji. She is also known as Ram Rani. I don't know why she doesn't put that first. It's first. And she's a great defender. She is the follower of Neem Karoli Baba. Many people must have heard of Neem Karoli Baba and his sage, healing, miraculous presence. My Neem Karoli Baba is the guru, her guru, and in that relationship you see the living importance of the idea of a guru. She has been defending Hinduism. She has been defending Hinduism in the education sphere, and she has done it through evaluating texts which according to her are misrepresentations, and they draw a curtain between true Hinduism and the modern Western people.
Namaskar. It's an honor to be here. Thank you very much. I think we've all been giving like pep talks, enthusiasm about the Dharma, and I also am speaking like that. And I'm going to not talk about my scholarly work so much. I'm going to do a little biography and show how my life is an example of reverse globalization, where the Dharma is poised to spread across the world. And I was born 62 years ago, I won't lie, and my father was a Southern Baptist. He was a soldier that went to Europe to fight the Nazis. My mother was a Roman Catholic. She was a Belgian who lived under the Nazi occupation. They met after the war, and he brought her to Texas. So there's this Roman Catholic and this Southern Baptist, and my sisters and I were the result. And in the wintertime, I would go to Catholic school, to Mass, Holy Communion, the whole thing. And in the summer times, I often spent with my grandparents in rural Texas, and I would go to the Southern Baptist Church where they had revival meetings, and they had vacation Bible school. And one day in vacation Bible school, they passed a cup around to raise money to save the poor little papist children. And I was old enough to know that papism, that was an insulting term for Catholic. And I didn't raise my hand and say, oh, that's me. But it just tore my heart up. I felt like I had 100 years war going on inside. My Baptist side of my family thought my Catholic side of the family was going to hell. So I decided I wanted to be an agnostic. So I told my mother I wanted to be an agnostic. And she was a philosophy professor, so she thought that was okay. And so then I read Gary Snyder and Allen Ginsberg, and I was an agnostic. And then I always say, Pichli Janam Ki Cheez. My mother sent me to Europe for a graduation present, and I hitchhiked to Afghanistan. I turned the wrong way somewhere. And Afghanistan was a very different country in 1970. The king was there, and the ladies with their little suits going to work at the bank, and very few burqas. And all these travelers following the Beatles to meet Maharishi Mahesh Yogi and do Vipassana. And so there was a long line of people traveling through. I was the youngest. I was 18. Everybody else was older. And so people took me under their wing and said, kid, you need to go to India. So I went to India, and I remember it was December 10th, 1970. And I got in a bicycle rickshaw and rode to Firozapur. And on the way, I had an experience that I kept thinking, I've never seen the sun before. I've never seen clouds before. I had a déjà vu, a familiarity experience. When I got to Firozapur, I saw a beautiful woman with roses in her hair and a sari. She was buying bananas, so I went to buy bananas. And there I saw a calendar of Hanuman. And I didn't know who Hanuman was, but I loved it. I asked if I could buy it, and I bought it and rolled it up and carried it with me. And then I was very fortunate. Being a young girl, I never had any problems. I was welcomed everywhere I went. I went to Ellora and Ajanta, Sanchi, and saw some beautiful places. And then I went up to the mountains, and I was very fortunate. I met the Dalai Lama, His Holiness, and went to other places in North India, and went back to Benares and lived on a houseboat in Asighat. And the people there are still my dearest friends. They were little children now, and now they have their own children, and they're my friends on Facebook. But I felt like at about age 19, the Dharma came into me, the Hindu Sanatana Dharma. I thought, wow, this is what I was meant to be. All that fighting inside of myself, it solved itself by the Dharma. All the epistemological and ontological problems that I had as a youth were solved. And then very fortunately, I met my guru Neem Karoli Baba in Kumaon, up in Nantazila. And he gave me the name Ramrani. And in 1973, he told me to go to America and go to college and study about Hinduism and make Hinduism more understood and better respected in the West. So after his Mahasamadhi, I went to America and I studied as an undergraduate at the University of Texas at Austin because I was a Texan. And then I got married and had children, and I taught world history. And I thought, well, I can teach about India in a world history class. And the textbooks were horrible. The textbooks were so many. I mean, I've been living in India. I had a degree in Indian studies, and the textbooks were just all wrong. And so I didn't teach from the textbooks. But astonishingly, the narrative in the textbooks about Islam and about other countries, Japan, China, they were much less controversial and sensational and stereotypical. But India was just wrong and all these terrible things, you know. It was a focus on population, poverty, and pollution. And they talked about the main gods of India. They mentioned Varuna and Indra. Like, they didn't even talk about the gods that are, you know, it's great if you're talking about Vedic traditions, but they didn't talk about India and Hinduism the way that I had learned it. So I thought, when my kids got a little older, and Maharaji Neem Karoli kept putting the idea in my head so then I went to graduate school. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, I started graduate school in January, 1 month after the Babri Masjid Ram Janambhoomi situation. And so I started graduate school as a Hindu, wanting to learn about Hinduism. And all I heard was the Hindu fascist, Hindu fundamentalist, be careful, as if they were going to drive airplanes into our buildings. And so my master's thesis was analysis of high school history textbooks, which I had used. And so I wrote some articles about it. You can find it online. This is called Temple of Doom in the Classroom. And I interviewed many Indian American students, Hindu American students who had gone to high school in America, and I got their opinion. And I did so many things on that master's thesis. But then I also saw that the way that Hinduism was taught at the university level was contributing to that negative narrative in the high school textbooks. So then for my PhD, I switched to the education department. So I thought I could do something about this here. But then when I graduated and I applied for jobs, I wasn't getting in. I found out that they were calling the Department of South Asian Studies, and the South Asian Studies people said, "Don't hire her, she's a Hindu fundamentalist." So I thought, why did Maharaji send me to do all this if I can't get a job? How can I actually fulfill his command? And then, as life is, my mother became ill and could no longer live alone. And so if I had had a job in some foreign state, I wouldn't have felt free to go and care for her. So I lived with my mother, and she is a wonderful person. She was so grateful. And last year she passed away. I always like to say she died between a foot rub and a cup of tea. I rubbed her feet on a Monday night and put her to bed and gave her some water. And Tuesday morning I brought her tea, and she had passed away on early Tuesday morning. And so so then Maharaji said, "Okay, your job's going again." And I contacted Ram Madhav and my friend Vamadeva Shastri and said, "Look, I'm back. I want to be involved again." And so here I am, and I'm very grateful. Now I have found when I embraced Hinduism, I didn't get baptized into Hinduism. I didn't get any kind of a ceremony. I just knew I was a Hindu. And I have a theory that when we die, everybody dies and becomes a Hindu, and they get reborn and they're Hindu, and then somehow they just get indoctrinated or converted to Islam or Christianity or some Abrahamic tradition, and when they die, they become Hindu again. And so I felt like I became Hindu when I was 18, finally. And so I got 2 minutes. But let me just finish then. I'll skip to the end, which is one of my favorite things about Hinduism. One verse in the Rig Veda that speaks to me, it hums in my heart, is in the Hymn of Creation, the 10th mandala. And I'm not a Sanskritist, so I'm just going to paraphrase. But after the one breathed, and the firmament, it will light in the dark. It's very much like Genesis, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was made flesh. Well, and the one breathed in the Rig Veda. And then he talks about the rishis and different things. And then at the end, in the 7th verse, the last stanzas, it says, "So that's the way that's the way the universe came into being. But perhaps it's not. But only God knows. But then again, perhaps even He does not know." And to me, this gives the absolute permission to question authority. I mean, this shows that Hinduism is experiential, experimental, and you can sit down and go in your heart of hearts and figure it out yourself. You don't have to be told. This is, to me, Hinduism. It's a living, alive, changing, dynamic religion. And there's no conflict between the parts. They just thrive together like a banyan tree. The roots just come down. The roots don't fight each other. And so I think probably I have 1 minute left, and I always begin and end everything with this. Shri 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 Ekazara Shri Babaji Neem Karoli Santa Maharaj Ki Jai.
Well, thank you very much for a very devotional introduction to us. And I'm glad the Lok Sabha people didn't know about your conversion. They might have raised some questions. We have had three perspectives. One is the continuity of a vision, that the same vision that inspired the Vedic people in a way inspires and shall inspire the world also. And we had Amish Tripathi contradicting some of the deviations, the marked things that have been done to sort of cloud the continuity of Indian civilization, showing because Aryan invasion would mean a disjunction, a disruption at one point of time, and since if it is established, it will mean there is no continuity. But he says that this is contested, and in the social disjunction like caste, you see, he opposes casteism. He says the word caste itself is a problem, English translation. Varna ashrama, and the Varna word appears 200 some more times in the Rig Veda itself. Varna means color. Varna also means a sound. And sound and color have the property that you cannot really separate one from the other. If you have brought a color chart, you know, the colors really merge into each other. They are artificial. In the same way, at the social level, this segregation is artificial, functional. And then Yavedji, pointing out the true strength of Hinduism, which she says is not really captured, not really understood by the West. And both these two speakers, later speakers, you know, they argued for fighting, for defending. I remember Swami Ranganathananji, I listened to him way back when I was a young man, that seems about 150 years ago. The Swami Ranganathananji saying, Hindu Dharma is a great civilization, but it needs to be defended. It needs to be defended. So that defense is needed. Dharma rakshak chahiye aur dharm ki raksha chahiye. And our tradition has been very fortunate, blessed by, he says, Shivji. I always say Bhole Baba. It's a blessed country because we have repeatedly had defenders of dharma, you know, coming yada yada hi dharmasya. So there are people who come. I will only sum up, I will just read out my 5 or 6 points. One is that the nature of, you know, what we should do is, we should first of all, a very simple task, read the Rig Veda. Very simple. Read the Rig Veda, and then it will be easier to discover that the Rig Vedic society continues to exist in the rural areas of India. Very easy to discover. And the nature of that Rig Vedic society was marked by simplicity, contentment, and nivritti, abstinence. These were the dominant, properties of that civilization. They still continue to be the properties of people who are rooted in the soil. Then we could talk about the foundational drivers of this Vedic Indian society. Drivers like that there is a force greater than us, number one. Second, there is a sanctity of everything, sacredness of everything, because Brahma is embedded, is in it, in everything. It's not a God which is outside the creation, but it is inside the creation. So everything is sacred. All life is sacred, nature is sacred. Third driver is as I've already said, a kind of, you know, refusing to indulge yourself, denying yourself for the sake of others, what Gita says, Lok Sangrah. So these things, do everything. So a housewife, even in India today, feeding the birds, feeding the animals, and feeding the ants in the evening, you know, it continues. It's there even in the cities. The society, the professions that are noted in the Rig Veda, the marriage practices, when a girl is married, you just read them and you watch a Hindu marriage, you find the same thing. Things are not changed. The polity, the purpose of polity, Nyaya, justice, from Rig Veda to the Artha Shastra, and it continues uninterrupted. And as long as the rulers were there, it continued. I will now not take much time. This is one level of society. Third is mind and thought. Very important. Some of the key terms of Indian mind, Hindu mind, like Atma, then Atma and Paramatma, then Karma Phala, Pap or Punya, Triguna, the Panchabhuta, Ritve, Chhe Ritve, Sapta Swara, Rasa. These terms which are, you know, Raso Vaisa, everything is Rasa. It's very much there even today. With the difference that Ras has also become Ganne ka Ras, Orange ka Ras. Apart from the Paramanand, Brahmanand Sahodara. So these conceptual structure, you can just look at MacDonald's concordance of Rig Veda, and you find these are there in those days. And then continuity of the thought system. We are people who believed in Atma Paramatma, and then after the Mahabharat war, you had the materialists who said nothing like Atma, nothing like Paramatma. You know, question rejection, complete rejection of this because of the cataclysmic experience of 36 lakh people dying in the war, and then reassertion of the Indian thought through Bhagavata Dharma, Bhakti, and then right down to the Bhakti movement, and you come down to the 18th century. This is continuity, intellectual continuity. And disciplinary continuity, Vedangas, phonetics, grammar, even today. No doubt. So this way, if we read the text and we look at the society, look at our structures, we find that there is a real continuity. Even the lived life of the people. In the lived life of the people, हल का हल से जोतना, बछड़े को बांधना, दूध के लिए, while milking a cow, so tying the calf, and the plowing the field with a hal. All these things, they are in the Rig Veda, and they are in the fields even today. When you go, when the rice is planted or wheat is planted. So continuity is not only a matter of words, it's there very much.